Hello BookTube, welcome back to my 2025 library tour. In this episode, I will be finishing off this bookcase here. Although this is not the end of classics, canonical, modern, and contemporary fiction, poetry, and drama, there will be two shelves after this. So let's get started. Picking up where I left off yesterday, I'm going to begin with more books by Yasunari Kawabata. First up is House of the Sleeping Beauties and Other Stories, which I have not really gotten into yet. This is Thousand Cranes by, of course, Yasunari Kawabata. This is the first Kawabata novel I ever owned. It's about a young man whose father was deeply enmeshed in the tea ceremony and had a number of affairs, two of whom the main character also ends up having affairs with, as well as one of his mistress's daughters, I think. All the while, the other mistress is trying to set up a marriage with an eligible young lady. It's been quite a while since I read this, so perhaps due for a reread. Beauty and Sadness, which I have not gotten around to yet. And finally, The Master of Go, which is a lightly fictionalized account of a retirement match for a major figure in the world of Go in the early 20th century, in which Kawabata covered for a major newspaper. Really good. It's one of my favorite books by Kawabata. Let's see if I can get these books all put back down here. This may not be pleasant. Anyway, okay, so next up is Punk's New and Selected Poems by John Keene. This won the National Book Award for Poetry 2 or 3 years ago. It's a pretty cool collection. I read it last year and rather liked it. So the next few books will be volumes of poetry. This is More Than This by David Kirby. I picked this up a few years ago from Louisiana State University Press. Not one of my favorites, I have to say. Next is Hosts and Guests by Nate Klug. This is from the Princeton series of contemporary poets from Princeton University Press, and is one of my favorite collections of poetry. I really, really like this collection. And next is Dien Kandao by Yusuf Komonyaka. This is a collection of poetry reflecting on Komonyaka's experiences during the Vietnam War. This is The Curve of Things by Kathy Cremens. This was published by Kevin Carey Press, which is distributed by the University of Chicago Press. Not a collection I'm all that fond of. Next is Immortality by Milan Kundera, translated by Peter Cusi. I've been wanting to read Milan Kundera for a very long time, and I picked this up last year, or maybe the year before, and haven't gotten around to it yet. Back to poetry with Philip Larkin, Collected Poems. So I've had this collection for a number of years now, and I've read it twice, and I like it. I like Larkin's work. He's not one of my favorites, though. This is a Collector Stories by David Levitt. This collects 2 or 3 short story collections and a collection of novellas. So it has Family Dancing, A Place I've Never Been, The Marble Quilt, all 3 of which are short story collections. Oh, but it collects 3 short story collections. So, I had this in my collection many years ago, got rid of it, and reacquired it a few years ago. So the next 2 books are back to poetry. First up is What Work Is by Philip Levine. This won the National Book Award for Poetry as well. So as I mentioned several times already, the Autumn House Anthology of Contemporary American Poetry is one that has introduced me to a number of poets that I had never encountered before, and one of them is Philip Levine. I quite like this collection. It was really good. Okay, I'm going to have to put this up real quick. So this part of the tour is going to have some interruptions, I think. Okay, see here, we did Levine. So the next should be Ada Lemon, or Ada Limon. Yeah, this is her collection, Lucky Wreck, which is out from Autumn House. This is the 20th, this is a reissue, 15th anniversary edition. Rather like this collection. This next collection is by Ewa Lipska. It's Dear Miss Schubert, translated by Robin Davidson and Ewa Elizabeta Novakovska. Published as part of the Lockhart Library of Poetry and Translation from Princeton University Press. I quite like this. So the next few poetry collections will be by Anne-Marie Macquarie, who is a poet that I was first introduced to through the Autumn House Anthology of Contemporary American Poets. This is her debut collection, Ivory Cradle, which, much like with All-American Poem by Matthew Dickman, was a winner of the APR Honickman First Book Prize. And quite good. I rather like this collection. I also have Gloryland, which is a good collection as well. She Heads into the Wilderness, which is the first collection of hers that I acquired, and perhaps my favorite. And I also have Heaven Beneath, which is also good. And in a few days, I will be hauling another collection of hers. So I now have all of Anne-Marie Macquarie. Next is the London Novels by Colin McInnes. It's an omnibus edition that includes City of Spades, Absolute Beginners, and Mr. Love and Justice. I picked this collection up because many years ago TCM had aired a loose musical adaptation of Absolute Beginners, starring David Bowie. And that got me wanting to try the novel, which I have tried several times and have not gotten on with. Sorry for all the interruptions, but this is the bottommost shelf on this bookcase, and I'm having a hard time pulling books out and putting them back in without causing a massive amount of disruption to the neighboring books. This next book is Medak Ali by Naguib Mahfouz. It's set during World War II in Cairo, and is about the lives of various people who live in Medak Ali. I had a copy of this book back when I was in high school. Managed to read it while I was in college and got rid of it. And a few years ago, I had a strong desire to reacquire a number of Nobel Prize winners that I had in my collection that I had subsequently gotten rid of. I have not come back to this book for a reread though yet. Next is some Australian poetry. Intimate Geography, Selected Poems, 1991 to 2010 by Jennifer Maiden. So I picked this up last year for Aussie April, and I rather liked the collection, although of the three Australian poetry collections that I read, this one I thought was the weakest of the three. But it's still quite good. Next is Le Mart d'Arthur by Sir Thomas Malory. So this is one of the major works of Arthuriana. I have never gotten around to reading the whole of Le Morte d'Arthur. I've read bits and pieces of it. Sticking with the Canonical, this is a really, really beat up copy of the complete plays of Christopher Marlowe. I've had this book for going on 19 years. I picked it up when I was in San Francisco, and I probably really should look into seeing if I can find a less beat up copy of the plays of Marlowe, which I have not revisited in basically since I bought this collection, I think. Next is And Their Children After Them by Nicolas Mathieu, translated by William Bridmore. It would be nice if they did not have it in that weird font. Rudimore. So this is a novel set in the 1990s about a group of young people who sort of connect while their parents are on vacation. Did not particularly get on with it when I tried it a few years ago. Next is Maybe the Moon by Armistead Maupin. This is one of Maupin's few novels that is not set in the Tales of the City universe. This is about a dwarf actress who is famous for playing a role reminiscent of E.T. in a very popular fantasy movie. And she is hungry to reattain the fame she had all those years ago while dealing with various politics. I remember this novel quite fondly, but it has been quite a while since I read it. This is Unusually Grand Designs by James Davis May, or Unusually Grand Ideas by James Davis May. So this is a poetry collection from LSD Press, and I rather liked it. This is Etudes by Friederike Mayrocker, translated by Donna Stonecipher from Siegel Publishing, which is distributed here in the U.S. by the University of Chicago Press. So this is a collection of prose poetry that I did not get on with when I tried it several months ago. Next is The Good Lord Bird by James McBride, National Book Award winner. So this is a historical novel that takes its inspiration, James Brown, and his John Brown, and his sort of Marjorie Harper's Ferry. I've not gotten around to this yet. I'm thinking about getting to it either maybe next month or in July, or perhaps in August. We shall see. I haven't quite decided, and I'm feeling a bit down today. So, next is Charming Billy by Alice McDermott, which is also a National Book Award winner. So this is a novel about a man named Billy who drank himself to death, and of his family picking up the pieces and trying to figure out what happened and why, and of a cousin who was quite close to Billy, sort of reflecting on what role he might have had. I rather liked the novel when I first read it, and a bit more critical of it on a reread, which usually happens. But it's been quite a while since I read this. Next is Lonesome Dove by Larry McMurtry. This won the Pulitzer Prize. So this is arguably the greatest Western of them all. It's a story of former Texas Rangers who went into the cattle ranching business at the very southern tip of Texas, who decide to move their outfit to the other side of the country in Montana. And this is the story of that epic journey, and then a return as one of the bosses ends up wishing that he desires to be buried in Texas. I've had several goes at this novel, and it's never quite worked for me. So, the next two books are by Fernanda Melchor. Hurricane Season, translated by Sophie Hughes. This is a novel set in rural Mexico about the murder of a local bruja and the various people's reflections on the young man who committed the murder. I read this book a few years ago and liked it. And so I have kept it. I also have Fernanda Melchor's more recent Paradise, which is about two young men at a luxury development who are rather bored and get up to significant amounts of mischief. Next is another poetry collection, Bridled by Amy Ming. This is out from Pleiades Press, but it was distributed by the LSU, if I remember correctly. Even though I think about it from a Libris. Not terribly fond of this collection. It's been a while since I've read it, though, but I didn't particularly get on with it. Anytime I try to read it, I've read it. Next is An Arrow's Flight by Mark Merlis. This won the Lambda Literary Award and is a retelling of a part of the Trojan War with an update to near modern times. This is the story of the son of Achilles, Pyrrhus, who is foretold to basically be needed for Troy to fall. And so this is the story of the surviving generals of the Achaeans coming to collect Paris and how the war ends. Have never really gotten into this novel. And finally, The Changing Light at Sandover by James Merrill. So this is James Merrill's big, weird super poem that deals with the occult and the Ouija board and that sort of stuff. It's been a very long time since I read it, and I don't remember much of it. So that concludes this bookcase. So there will now be two more parts of classics, canonical, modern, and contemporary fiction, poetry, drama. So the next, well, they'll probably both be fairly long because the bookcase is wider than this one. And the last one I'm going to dip into a third shelf because there's really not much on that third shelf. Unless, of course, the video goes over long. But we'll do that Monday and possibly Tuesday. Anyway, BookTube, hopefully this part of the tour was enjoyable. I know there's a lot of sort of me fiddling around with the books down there because I couldn't get them to come out smoothly or go back in smoothly. And it was kind of starting to frustrate me, and this has been a bit of a frustrating reading day, being the first day off of Fairy Tale. Things have not quite gone how I'd hoped, and I will report on that Friday with weekly reads. So until then, BookTube, thank you. Have a great rest of your day, and see you next time.